So with Queensland out of the way, we turn our attention to the New South Wales Blues. In 2024, they are under a new coach, Michael Maguire, who had a pretty successful run with the New Zealand Kiwis. Now with the new coach and going with what I said last year about James Tedesco, he won't be my number one. He had his time in the sun, and I think it's time for a changing of the guard, a change of leadership with this new coach. So at number one, I've got Dylan Edwards, who's kind of been stuck behind superstar fullbacks, your Tedescos, Mitchells, Trbojeviches. I mean, to get a run in the Kangaroos, he ended up playing on the wing. I do think he's one of the form fullbacks in the league. If he isn't one, he's number two for sure. And yeah, I think it's time for him to have a crack. So I'm locking in Dylan Edwards. Moving on to the wing, left or right, I will say left. I've got another absolute lock, and that is the workhorse Brian To'o. Not much needs to be said about this unit. If you want to talk about stats, he is currently leading the league for tackle breaks. It's actually him, then Dale Edwards, and Tedesco after that. His playstyle, along with like Dylan Edwards, is tailor-made for the Origin arena. That's actually interesting that Tedesco is still in the top 3 for tackle breaks. Well, I guess it's not surprising. He hasn't even been playing bad this season. In fact, you could probably say he's in form. I still think it's Dylan's time. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on to the left center. This should be another lock. Regardless of how his form is in Clubland, Latrell Mitchell would be my left center, but I do believe he made himself unavailable. So if that's the case, I'm going to go with Steve Crichton. We already know what he can do. He's a decent defender, I guess, moments player that's earned plenty of big moments, and he'd probably be a lock for most. Anyway, we move on to my Smokey, my right center. Hear me out. Moses Suli. He never gets brought up in any Origin talk, and is probably one of the most underrated outside backs. Stylistically, he's perfect for the arena. He's super physical in attack, and is defensively sound. Hardly ever misses tackles, no matter the level or quality he's coming up against. This isn't Glaze, by the way. In fact, speaking of quality, they play the Bulldogs, so he should be coming up against Steve Crichton. That'll be a good watch, as are all of his head-to-heads. I guess it doesn't really get talked about because he does play for the Dragons, who are, I mean, let's not sugarcoat it, they are absolute trash, or they have been. And that leads me into my winger. I've got Zach Lomax, who is having another breakout season in a new position, playing on the wing, a position that he apparently doesn't like to play. That was the narrative floating around, which again is kind of nuts given that he has been killing it on the wing. But yeah, with players unavailable, I think now's the time to try these guys like a Lomax, a Sully. You'll probably see a Jesse Ramey, and that's kind of the consensus for debutants in the Blues back 5. Joey Sua'ali'i, that's another name that pops up. I do think he's tailor-made for the arena, just how aggressive he can be. Him and those high knees. It's like he's paying tribute to Triple H every time he runs the footy. Any of these names I mentioned, I wouldn't be mad at. They're all decent selections. Again, I think Sully on his day can hang with the best of them, can trouble the best of them. He just needs to be given the opportunity. He hasn't really been playing bad footy either. As for the halves, now we'll start with the absolute lock, that is Nicho Hynes. It's his time to shine, with the great chin of Penrith being unavailable. By the way, for the images on screen, the stats will vary. So like for the halves, we've got forced dropouts, average kicking meters and all that, as well as the try assist, tackle efficiency and whatnot. That's what those mean. So yeah, Nicho, he's my 7, and to pair him in the halves, I was tossing up between a Matt Burton, but I'm going to go with Jerome Luai. They do have contrasting styles, and you could probably say that Matt Burton's is more suited for Origin. You know, nothing too flashy, it's actually super straightforward. And that bloody bomb, is it enough to put him ahead of Jerome Luai? For me, it's a no. That could change. He could come out and have an absolute general play kicking masterclass, and that'll probably sway me, but no. Luai in the 6, super experienced, and if we're going for chemistry, we throw Critter and To'o on his left as well. Overall, I just think as a 6, Luai is more well-rounded. Moving on to the engine room, we have Payne Haas, another lock. We don't have to say much about Payne Haas. We see his performances week in, week out. I mean, to perform at the level he does with what he has going on in the background is kind of insane, man. That dude's mental is ironclad. At hooker, I've got Therese Robson, super solid defender, one of the few shining lights in this terrible Cowboys team that have been struggling this past month. He's been consistent. Speaking of super solid defenders, I've got Jake Trbojevic, who has been getting slandered egregiously online. I think he can still hang with the best of them in the front row and get through that dirty work. Not to mention he does have a decent passing game too, and I thought he was one of the Blues' vocal leaders, or on-field leaders I should say. It'll be interesting to see who they actually pick. For me, I like Jake Trbojevic. Moving on to the back row, starting with our left edge back row, we got Angus Crichton, who has been on an absolute legacy type of run this past month. His return to form has been one of the most fun watches recently, and in that short stint, I think pretty much cemented his spot in the back row. I was tossing up between him and Hudson Young, but I have to give it to Crichton. For the right edge, we've got Haumole Olakau'atu. To be real, he's been one of the most consistent back rowers these past couple of years, and in my opinion, what he offers in attack is too good to pass up. And for my lock, I've got Cam McInnes. For one, his combination with Nico Hines. Now, if Cleary was playing, I'd pick Isaiah Yeo, and since he isn't there, we'll take Cam McInnes. Like we've been saying, the Origin style of play is a pretty simple one. It's all defense, bend or break, and you need some defensive goblins. You've heard of Luke Goblins, well, McInnes is a tackle goblin, much like the rest of the middles we have. Plus, the word on the street is that Maguire wants him in the Blues or something like that, whether that be at lock, hooker, coming off the bench. I'm keen to see how that unfolds, or if it was just all gas from the media. And now we have arrived at our bench. Starting off with the 14, it's Api Koroisau. Queensland kind of set the trend. Ben Hunt and Grants. I can see the Blues answer being Robson and Koroisau, like they've already done, or maybe a Cam McInnes and Koroisau. I think Api's actually a lock on this side. For our back rower, we've got Liam Martin. You want to talk about physicality? Go ahead and watch Liam Martin coming off the bench last series. I think limiting his minutes and just letting him run loose for like 20 minutes could be super beneficial. Sticking with physicality, Mad Dogs running wild. Our front row rotation, first up we got Mitch Barnett. I'm not sure if Webby's the first person to throw Barnett in the front row, but seeing him consistently play there for the Warriors this past season and a half, his effort's always putting in 100%. It's been somewhat of a masterstroke for Barnett's career. And our second middle, coming off the bench, we've got Isaiah Yeo. Could be seen as a waste coming off the bench, but I get that he's an 80-minute player. Because he can play 80 minutes doesn't mean he has to. Could be a little light for the middle, but he did come off the bench for them last year. He can play in the middle. I stacked the bench with straight up DAWGs and hard workers. I think Yo and his playstyle, accompanied with Uppy coming off the bench, would cause a lot of headaches for Queensland. Uppy and his bag of tricks around the ruck, Yo and his footwork, the two loose cannons, and Martin and Barnett. That's a pretty decent bench. The Blues legit have so many options, man, for most of the positions. But yeah, that's it for me. That's my 17. One Smokey they get to know love. I think we'll kill it in the arena. Let me know your thoughts on that selection, your thoughts on my team in general, and if you have a Blues lineup of your own, show us. Don't just throw stones and hide your hands. Anyway, we're going to call it there. If you did enjoy that, be sure to run and shoot that like button. And for more rugby league related content or more content in general, go ahead and drop your boy a cheeky sub. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you later.